Hi. So we are going to talk a little bit about critical theories, what they are, and how we use them in reading plays, seeing plays, creating theater. So before I explain why we're going to talk about critical theories, what the heck they are, I do need to acknowledge where a lot of the information that I packaged for you today comes from a book called Critical Theory Today, a user-friendly guide by Lois Tyson, published by Routledge. It's in its third edition currently. So that's just me being a good source citer. If you're interested in critical theories, I strongly recommend this book. It is as it says, it's a very user-friendly guide. There are other sources, and if you're interested in this sort of thing, please contact me because it might take some, sometimes it helps to have some references. So critical theories, what are they? First of all, just to acknowledge that the terms are interchangeable, kind of literary theories. This is cultural criticism. It can be called many different things, but basically it is using philosophical and different ways of looking at a work of art or looking at the world or whatever, using a lens of a specific theory. Now, a theory is, there are many different theories. I am just going to cover a couple in these few critical theory lectures that I'm including in this class. So, first of all, before I even get to this subjectivity versus objectivity, I want to just sort of address the elephant in the room. What the heck does this have to do with theater? What does it have to do with plays? That's a really good question. And let me say, very importantly, that the last thing that I want the inclusion of critical theories in this class to do is to make this class seem overly academic, dry, and boring. I'm just going to acknowledge now that some of you are going to just think these are crazy and not really get why we do them. I encourage you to please just stick with it and take them for what they're worth and use them to make your analysis of your productions and the plays that we read deeper. Critical theories, the ones that we're going to cover especially, can be applied to any work of art, can be applied to your bedspread, can be applied to Coca-Cola, whatever. They're a framework or a lens that gives us a way to discuss discuss many aspects of a play or a production. There are many ways that we sort of do this sort of work. We talked about the work of Aristotle. Well, looking at his 6 elements of a play it gives us some concepts and some vocabulary that we can apply our own analysis to. Well, these critical theories do the same thing. We're going to talk about, first of all, Marxism, and then we're going to talk about what I've sort of grouped together into one horribly reductive category called identity theories, which include feminism, LGBTQIA theory, and African American theory. So, and then we're also going to discuss postmodernism. So there are certain concepts and vocabulary words that are associated with analyzing a work of art from these different perspectives. That doesn't mean that the theory is an end in and of itself. There are a lot of theories that I feel are kind of just a little bit too much navel gazing. It's about the theory. It's not about the work that you're analyzing. I was first introduced to all these theories in graduate school, and I feel that it is extremely important to introduce them at the undergraduate level. So as you move through your college career, you already have a decent understanding of what they're about, and it can really give you a leg up in your other classes. So I love to hear your thoughts on what you think about these theories, what you think about these lectures, and how useful they are to you. So let's just get going. I want to reinforce that I understand that this is not the kind of thing that you might be accustomed to. You might feel like you're in over your head. Just go for it. You know everything you need to know. And the things that I'm going to present in these lectures are an extremely short introduction to these theories, but I'm hoping they will make it, it will give you some tools to analyze your plays with, because you will need to use these theories in your production analysis papers, and maybe even in your final project, your manifesto, or whatever your final project might be. So let's talk about the theories. I've warmed you up and warned you and probably made you real thrilled to listen to this. But so here we go. So we're going to start with Marxism, but a concept that we need to introduce first is subjectivity versus objectivity. A lot of these theories, and not just the theories, but just the way we sort of look at the world today, is the difference between subjectivity and objectivity. Basically, it's a common belief in the world right now that objectivity is just not a thing anymore. There is no objective truth. That everything we look at is very subjective. I'm looking at this color green on this slide, and to me it means the bedspread when I was a kid, the color of the trees in the forest, what have you. When you look at it, you have very different associations. So something that is really important to keep in mind as we sort of progress as humans is the idea that everything is subjective. There is no objective truth. There is no one unified meaning to life. There is no common goal. Like the American dream is not something that everybody wants. So anyway, that's just something to throw out there. The difference of long ago, it was believed that there was, it was largely organized around religion or financial arrangements, but usually religion, or a combination of the two, that there was one sort of way to view the world. We all had one sort of goal as a human, and and it was very objective. This is the truth, and there's no way of disputing that. We don't really believe, life is not really organized that way anymore. So just one idea that we'll throw out there, that it may help as we look towards this. I am acknowledging my subjectivity in talking about these subjects, these topics, these theories. If I'm going to be a responsible critical theorist, I'm going to acknowledge that I am very much a white, gay male who grew up in the 80s largely, and 70s, maybe some, 70s, 80s, and in the 90s. So my way of seeing the world is very much influenced and informed by my experiences growing up as a gay male in the Southeast who was bullied for being gay, who, probably a lot of my life revolved around that experience. So the purpose of these theories, and let me add, these theories can be quite political in some ways. But the purpose of introducing these theories is not to turn you into me. I'm not trying to make you all vote Democratic or whatever because of this information I'm presenting to you. There's simply a way of viewing the world, and every interpretation is valid as long as it's based on facts, basically. So, and again, just to add here at the bottom I put here, the purpose is not to perpetuate theories. It's simply to give us some tools to discuss the plays and productions that we look at in this class. So we're going to start with Marxism. You have probably heard of Karl Marx. There's a picture of him with his hot beard, looking like Big Sexy Daddy. So this is Karl Marx. His theories revolve around economy and how the distribution of wealth affects our lives. Now, when I say here, it's not just for breakfast anymore. When we think of Marxism, we think of communism because of the way his works are, because what he called for was communism. However, the fact that the USSR collapsed doesn't mean that Marxism is not valid anymore. Very few, if any, truly communist governments have ever existed or ever do exist. They're usually something worse. They're totalitarianism or something. So if we need to dissociate ourselves from thinking communism is terms of like what Russia had or what has or whatever. His theories are very different from what you would actually experience as a human being in Russia today or in the past. So, Marxism. What are some of the main ideas in Marxism? First of all, Marxist thought believes that we need to define what an ideology is. Okay, so an ideology is nothing but a system of beliefs. Religions are ideologies. Some of them differ very much. Catholicism differs from Methodism. You know, they have different belief systems. But it's not, religion is the easy one. I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit. Another ideologies are karate is an ideology. There's a system of beliefs set to that. Bodybuilding, if you follow a process of, you know, a specific type of training to increase muscle mass, then that's an ideology. Some countries have ideologies if they have a very strict government that, you know, sort of reinforces a belief system. So the purpose of what Marx talks about with ideologies are a way of controlling people. If there's a really good ideology, and to put anything in these theories as good or bad is kind of difficult, but an ideal ideology acknowledges that it is an ideology, and those who participated in it are doing it through it by choice. So, but that's not usually the way ideologies work. If an ideology is really going to become very powerful, it makes the people participating in it thinks that it's just natural. So the idea of the American dream, it's definitely an ideology. The American dream is a belief system that says that we all want to own a home. We want to have, every adult in the home should have a car. We should be able to retire at age fill in the blank, whatever the age is at the time. The belief is at the time about retirement age. So it has this very strict, I shouldn't say strict, it has this very clear system of beliefs. Also, with the American dream is the belief that anybody, if they work hard enough, can achieve all these things. See, that is an ideology. And the way that it is considered most powerful and how it really takes over things is the people that it's trying to control through this ideology, it's convincing them that this is natural. It's natural to want all these things, but more importantly for the American dream ideology, it's natural to believe that you can achieve all these things. Therefore, if you don't, you're a loser. Now, we all know that there are many reasons that people don't achieve the American dream. Sure, maybe some are lazy and don't want to work for a living, but there are many other reasons, like systemic racism, the gender gap, what if you have a disability? What if you are not part of the mainstream? What if you're not white? Many reasons that the belief system that if you just work hard enough, you're going to get what you want. We all know that that's really, at the end of the day, not quite true. So you're beginning to see how some of these theories can seem political, but this is a way of Marxist analysis of looking at the view. So that's how ideologies become repressive. This can also be looked at in terms of countries that were colonized. White settlers go to, for example, a country in Africa, or it wasn't just Africa. Many countries have been colonized. But if you go to that country and you tell those people that, oh, your way of life is primitive, you need to be like us and drink tea out of porcelain cups and put sugar in your tea, whatever, then you start teaching the people that you're trying to colonize, it's just natural. This is what God intended, which is often one of the ways you would argue that something's natural. And then there are negative effects for the people that they're colonizing. So that's one example. So that's just this term of ideology that I'm throwing out there. It's a system of beliefs. Our job as a Marxist critic is to identify ideologies at work in a cultural product. Now, let me identify a cultural product. Cultural product is anything. It could be a play, could be a production, two very different things, could be a bedspread, could be a car, could be a screw, could be tools, could be anything that a culture produces. It could be a system of thought, whatever. That's a cultural product. And so you can look at those things and analyze the ideology at work. What's the belief system of the people that created this work of art, for our purposes, our work of art, and how is it received by people of that culture and that are participating in that ideology? So, Marxism, specifically, human events can only be understood in their material and historical circumstances. History is very important. So when we think about, just to clarify, when we think about material circumstances, it's your financial means. It's the objects that you can afford to buy, the home you live in, how comfortable your clothes are, how old your clothes are, who new they are, how old is your car, whatever. So looking at your material circumstances is very important. And a Marxist critic will always look at the historical influences of how that product was produced. So if we're looking at a play, we will look at what life was like during the year that it was written. And, what was the playwright's historical material circumstances, and generally what were the main systems of belief in place at the time that it was written. All cultural products can only be understood as a product of the socioeconomic and ideological conditions at the time and place it was created. That's a long, wordy sentence, but I think it's kind of clear. We can only look at things as a product of when and where they were made. So let's get more specific. Believe me, I realize some of these things, some of you might be going, what the heck are you talking about? So let's do some Marxist analysis. And when we read plays, I will do a little mini analysis of these theories for those plays. So I'll be putting these into practice. I'm not just throwing these out and saying, hey, good luck. I'll try to give you some examples. So if you're going to analyze a play or a production from a Marxist perspective, you're going to ask yourself, does this play or does this production reinforce capitalist, imperialist, or classist values? Really, we could just ask, does this work reinforce an economic belief system? It doesn't have to be only imperialism, but Marx was definitely a critic of capitalism. That's why he reached the conclusion that communism is the most humane and the most effective form of government, a form of economy. So you look at the work of art and say, is it saying that capitalism is good? Is it saying that capitalism is bad? Because really, most of the works that we're going to analyze are written by playwrights who were living in a capitalist economic system, as much of the world is today. Perhaps you could even argue that Shakespeare was. But anyway, before capitalism was a thing. But so how does it reinforce a system of beliefs associated around material circumstances? Does it reinforce the idea that different classes are different, have different meanings, or that if you're a part of this class, then you are endowed with certain characteristics and qualities, and if you're in part of that class, does it say something else about you? So yeah. Is the work conflicted? That's a really good question. We can ask this for most of these theories. Does it seem to say that capitalism is bad, but it's really saying capitalism is good? So when we ask if a work is conflicted, we're always asking, did the playwright or the director intentionally have this perspective, or was it unintentional? Were they trying to create a production that said, we all need to be happy and share our wealth with each other, but they really wrote a play where the main character ends up being rich and owning everything, what have you. Is it conflicted? And we'll talk about that when we talk about the other theories too. What does the work say about the socio-economic conditions of the time and place it was written and of the characters? Is the play saying something about the material circumstances of the people who were living at the time when it was written? Even if it was set in some other time, Shakespeare wrote about subjects set, in the long ago and far away. Many playwrights do that. But what is that? Just because they said it in another time doesn't. What does it say about the time that it was really written? Because every work of art is saying something about when it was produced, even if you're setting it in some other time. What are the material circumstances of the characters, and how does this create the meaning of the play? Simple, down and dirty. Are the characters wealthy, or do they have solid, reliable material circumstances? Can they feed themselves? Do they have a roof over their head? Is that roof leaking? Does it have roaches? How is their financial life affecting? How are their finances affecting their life? That's kind of the easiest way into that. And here I'm kind of repeating myself here. So for all the questions, we're asking ourselves, was the way we received it, do we think that was intentional or unintentional on the playwright's part or the director's part? So one last thing I want to throw about Marx, two concepts, two definitions: the base and the superstructure. Marx called the base of all societies, the economy, he called that the base. That everything else about the economy is built on that base. So we live in a capitalist society. Everything about our world is based on the fact that we live in capitalism. Our school system, our system of government, definitely, which frequently can't be separated from the economy, our everything, religion in this country, the educational system in this country, everything in a country is based around the economy, whatever it might be, capitalism, communism, socialism, what have you. So everything else is built on top of that, and that's called the superstructure. So just two sort of useful terms to think about. And that's it for Marx. That was very short. Hopefully what I was trying to do is just throw out a few basic concepts. Marxism is sometimes referred to as materialism, but there's actually another critical theory of materialism that looks at literally physical objects as opposed to sort of spiritual objects. So I find materialism to be a confusing term. Some people don't use the term Marxism anymore since the USSR fell, and since it seems that there are no communist governments that are ever really going to happen. But I think Marxism is a more accurate way. If you're going to use these concepts of analyzing material circumstances, Marxism is sort of the easiest way to go. So that's it for Marx. All these little web addresses are me being a good student and citing where I got the images. So if you have any questions, please post them, and I look forward to telling you all about identity theories in just a bit.